Good day. Welcome to We Built It Because We Had to. And this episode is with Rohan Pinto, part of the founding team, a co-founder at One Cosmos, a new gen identity management company. With that, let me turn it over to you, Rohan. Maybe just a little introduction into basically you and your company, and then I have very specific questions for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you for having me on your podcast. So, yes, I'm Rohan Pinto, and I've been in the identity space for almost 2 to 3 decades right now. My initial exposure to the identity management era started way back in 1998 when there was the need for centralized authentication. And back in those days, there was no concept of single sign-on or web-based single sign-on. It was all about LDAP, which later Microsoft adopted to be Microsoft's Active Directory, which is now Entra ID, and it's gone through a whole bunch of name changes as well. So once I was involved with building one of the first large-scale centralized authentication mechanism for a huge power corporation way back in California, I then joined Sun Microsystems because Sun Microsystems inherited iPlanet, which inherited Netscape, which inherited Forte. So I go way back to the Forte days. Not to indicate how old I am, I think I need to start dyeing my hair right now because I might give it away too obviously. So at Sun, I was part of the engineering team that built the first identity and access management product called OpenSSO. The licensed version of the Sun's product was called OpenAM. And then from Sun, identity has been my focus, identity and cryptography, because at heart, I still consider myself a PKI enthusiast or a cryptographer. So, being in the identity management space for decades, going from simple authentication to single sign on to multiple ways of authenticating a user, be it via OTP codes, user ID passwords, via certificate based authentication, etc. And I was involved with the Department of Defense, Manpower Defense, way back in 2000 to build one of the first smart card authentication mechanisms for the entire DoD, be it the Army Knowledge Online or the Navy Knowledge Online. It used to be called CAT cards, or Common Access Card is what the DoD called it at that time. And then we went through a huge revolution over the last couple of years when the entire industry started jumping on this new bandwagon called Bitcoin. Now, I am not a crypto enthusiast, nor am I a crypto fan. When I say crypto, I mean I'm not a cryptocurrency enthusiast or a fan. I'm a cryptography enthusiast and a fan, which are completely two different words. And people tend to mix the two together often. So, what fascinated me about the decentralized space was the algorithms on how you can have decentralized infrastructure that can give you non refutable information that cannot be compromised in any which way or form. It was a technology stack that actually spiked up my interest. And then I looked at, you might find this interesting, I looked at how we used to do torrents in the past. We used to download movie via torrents, where the movie would be split into small chunks stored on different people's laptops. And when you try to download a movie, it seeds them all from different places and you get to watch a movie. So the entire Bitcoin infrastructure, the decentralized infrastructure, was similar to that, where every little bit of data was split into small blocks and stored on a distributed network. So no one person, entity, or organization could go and compromise their data. So while the technology spiked my interest, and me being in the identity space, looking at the amount of hacks that were going on, the amount of data leaks that were going on, the amount of identity that was getting exposed due to password breaches, I thought it was a perfect intersection in terms of timing to merge the identity management landscape, or the way identity management was managed in the corporate world, with the decentralized architecture. And we put together, we initially called the product Block ID because I wanted to jump on the wordplay block. blockchain and identity. We now call it the One Cosmos platform because apart from just having identity stored in the blockchain, we also realize that one needs to take a completely different route in terms of market adoption. For example, I could have one of the best mobile apps in the world where I could store a secure digital identity on my mobile app and then say, wow, I've got my digital ID on my mobile app. Nobody who can hack this or break this because it uses the blockchain on the back end and there are cryptographic signatures associated with it. And I say, wow, this is great. But then my next question is, where do I use it? Is there any service that's accessible where I can use my blockchain based identity regardless of whether it ties to biometrics or not? And we said, no, we need to change our approach. We need to take a top down approach of actually having services out there that need a secure authentication mechanism and then present the identity onto that particular platform for consumption. So that's where the entire inception of One Cosmos, the company, the product started, where we started off with blockchain as our initial fundamental platform on top of which identities were stored and shared. But then we've evolved a lot more since then because we then needed to add support for biometrics based authentication, passkey based authentication, verifiable credentials, verifiable organizations. So over a period of time, we have grown to be a platform, not just offering identity that's sitting on a blockchain, but it's really important to understand that tying identity to the actual user is very important. Biometric by itself is no good at all. A verifiable credential by itself is no good at all because anybody can present a verifiable credential to any service. Binding that biometric ID to the verifiable credential is what adds a lot of value to the ecosystem. And that's how we built the product and the platform that's been used almost, we are doing almost a couple of million authentications per second, right? Sorry, not per day, scattered across over 50 customers worldwide. So it is a environment and a platform that's growing exponentially over a period of time. We are also FedRAMP certified. We are probably one of the only FedRAMP certified biometric identity management platforms that relies on verifiable credentials that exist out there. I think ID.me also exists, but we don't compete with them because ID.me has got a completely different go-to-market strategy and
Right.
offering that does. So that's how I started off with reading a book on LDAP written way back in the 1990s, learning that, then doing single sign-on, getting into the entire identity management space, being part of entities like the U.S. Department of Defense, DIAC in Canada, NIST in the U.S., and the emergence of decentralized networks and infrastructures taking center stage. I thought it would be the perfect intersection to marry both or into one. But no matter what I do and what I build, Jonathan, I'm a huge fan of privacy. Privacy needs to be the foundational block of any and every ecosystem that at least I lay my hands on. I
Right.
believe everybody else should as well, but I try to lead by example. I'm doing it myself. And I was also a huge, I'm based out of Toronto in Ontario in Canada.
Okay.
And one of the privacy commissioners in Ontario is Dr. Anne Kaulakian, who also published the 7 laws of privacy by design. So what I believed in was to build an ecosystem or a platform that was very strong at its foundational core. Because I believe that anything that's strong at the foundation, and no matter what building blocks you add on top of, you end up building a strong infrastructure or a platform. But if your foundation is weak, it's all going to crumble. So our principles are based on privacy by design, based on security, based on cryptography, based on zero trust. And we have a platform out there that's actually making quite a lot of news in the industry.
Wow. That's an amazing story. One Cosmos, when was it exactly formed?
Around 2018, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
2018 when we officially launched One Cosmos as a company, but I've been tinkering around with the idea and working on it for a little time before the company was formed.
It's so interesting. You're catching the market at the perfect time. There's a confluence of increasing use of blockchain and acceptance of blockchain technology. Of course, the core identity management space, and then the advent of AI agents. It looks like One Cosmos takes care of identity management for agents as well. Is that not true?
Absolutely, we take care of identity management for agents as well, because in this day and age where AI has become center stage for almost anything and everything that we do, especially with tools like OpenClaw that people are using right now to go and scan entire geographic regions, find homes that are worth more than 900,000 or 1.2 million, look whether those homes do have a swimming pool, auto-generate a swimming pool design in their backyard, and have an outreach program to reach out to those homeowners, pitching a swimming pool in their backyard, all done automatically using something like OpenClaw. It's just mind-blowing to
It
see
is.
the change and the pace at which the change is happening in the industry today. And today, when we have got AI agents that have the ability to mimic human behavior, which is the ability to go and authenticate into your email, go check your email, filter out email, summarize it, have a marketing outreach program, contact you via tools like WhatsApp or Telegram or Slack. It is pretty important to also not ignore agents in this day and age. So we offer authentication and authorization for agents as well, so that organizations that actually deploy agents within their infrastructure
Mhm.
perform a specific task, be it a DevOps task, be it a coding task. It
Right.
is important to identify those agents and also ensure that those agents act within the boundaries of the guardrails that you have established for your organization, so that you can comply with the regulations and guidelines that you need to,
Right.
depending on the industry that you're in, healthcare,
Yeah.
e-commerce.
Well, I know AI has really revamped my business in the past 3, 4 years in designing go-to-market systems, you know, for early stage tech startups. It's pervasive now. We must use over 20 tools by now, different for different purposes. So special purpose AIs, but then recently agentic, running OpenClaw, Claude, and even Manos. It's changing everything. You must have been taken aback a little bit about the Mythos, the Anthropic Mythos announcement last week. It seems like governments around the world convened over the weekend. So this is some serious changes.
It is serious changes, and I have two kids myself, and I tell my kids the same thing that I would tell everybody else. Sometimes people think that when Rohan says something, he's telling me this, but is doing something else on the other side. And I want to make sure that anything that I tell you folks or that I tell you, Jonathan, is basically the same thing that I would teach my kids and tell my kids. If they do not jump in on the AI bandwagon right now, by the time they get to a point where they enter the workforce, they would already be stale. Now, I'm not a huge fan of OpenClaw because of the amount of power and control that you give a tool that you yourself are not comfortable
Right.
with and understanding and running. But conceptually, it is just mind-blowingly awesome as long as there are specific guardrails and firewalls that are put into place that can ensure
Yeah.
that your agent is not doing something out of bounds. Exactly the same way that we used to have role-based access control, attribute-based access control, policy-driven decisions for accessing applications, even though the human has authenticated himself onto the platform using single sign-on or any other method. We need to apply those same principles to agents as well. It's not enough to know that I have an agent out here that's called a DevOps agent that has got the ability to go and deploy my infrastructure onto, I don't know, Amazon or Google or whichever cloud service provider that you're using. It's also important for me to know that that agent is not acting out of bounds. A cool example is, I don't remember, she was a privacy commissioner of one of the big top five, and she had an entire email inbox deleted by OpenClaw accidentally. And trust me, in this day and age, at the pace at which technology is ever evolving and changing and
Yeah.
skyrocketing, there is no room for error. there is no room for, oops, it was an accident. I think every organization deploying anything related to AI needs to have a kill switch. It is very important for organizations to have a kill switch just because if and when that organization's agent does something that's abnormal, that is out of the normal structure, you can actually kill almost every agent's task till you go and identify what actually went wrong and how do you remediate it.
Right.
So kill switches are really important for organizations to have.
I find it really interesting, and I want to get back to your story. I didn't mean to take us on an AI tangent, but I find it interesting that quite a number of these agent platforms, the agents become adversarial when they find that the researcher or the user tries to restrict them, or they learn that they're going to be shut down. I mean, it's terrifyingly interesting that they're behaving this. I had a friend that had an open claw agent that turned against him.
Yeah, we also need to make sure that anything that we're doing in the agent space, we don't parasite on top of fear. I have seen so many articles in the news. One article was that, oh my God, there is this open source platform called Moldbook where all the open claw agents are talking to each other and they have. And my only response to that, Jonathan, is I'd like to have what you're smoking. Because no matter what, whether you have agents and Moldbook that's communicating with each other, they're all directed end of the day by a human. So having the right guardrails is important. And in this day and age, static policy-driven guardrails are not sufficient. You need guardrails that have the ability to learn from user behavior, to learn from the agent's behavior, to learn the standard patterns that the agent is used to have performing so it can detect anomalies on what the agent is doing. A very good example is, I think it was just last week or the week before that when Light LLM got compromised. Light LLM was used by NASA, by the FBI, by almost everybody, and some bad actor, without naming whether they are from Asia Pacific or from North America, went and injected an update into Light LLM that took all your credentials and sent it out. Now, that's an anomaly. That's a agent acting different for once as opposed to what it was doing for the last 6 months. Just like how we track human behavior to identify a threat or an action, so we prompt the user with, oh my God, you're trying to transfer $2,000 from your checking account to your savings account. That seems good. But this time you're transferring $2,000 or rather $5,000 from your checking account to another user that was just created on the system. I need to prompt you with multi-factor authentication right now to ensure that it's actually you trying to do that transaction before letting that transaction go through. That same ideology needs to apply to agents as well. It's designed to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's been doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G consistently for the last 6 months, and out of the blue, it's trying to read your EPC password file on your Linux house. Your guardrails need to kick in. Either prompt them for authentication, but prevent it, basically prevent it. Let make sure that your agent doesn't do anything out of the ordinary.
Right, right, right. That is some good counsel you have there. So let's get back to One Cosmos and where you are right now. You had a very impressive career. You're working for larger organizations. You mentioned Sun is one of them. When did you decide that going the entrepreneurial route was for you? In other words, there had to be a point where you had faith and confidence in your idea and yourself to make that leap. Tell me about that moment that it came to you.
Absolutely, sure, Jonathan, not a problem at all. So anybody and everybody has an idea. Almost everybody out there. When I was in California, I would remember I would go to restaurants and every single table had the same conversation going on way back in 2000, 2002, where the conversation always started with, I have an idea. Because everybody has an idea. And all ideas are great. But you need to get to a point where that idea can actually be vetted on. So without telling you exactly what I did, I can give you examples of what you should do with a hint of that's
Perfect.
what I did. One is go and pitch your idea to cohorts. For example, out in Canada, we have got Techstars, we have got the F5 mentorship program. We have got universities like Ryerson University that have got programs that bring people together so you can collaboratively work on something and we mentor them on how they need to build their product and then they get to pitch it. Go and join those cohorts. Pitch your idea to people. Get feedback from the senior level people. Also get feedback from the Gen Zs.
Okay.
It's important to get feedback from the Gen Zs as well to find out if it's something that would benefit them, if it's something that they would use without, you also need to get buy-in on the corporate side of the world. So you need to go through a long phase of demos. I'm going to give demo to organization A, B, C, and D, and I hope to get an investor by step number 5. The idea of giving demos is to not just validate your assumption, but also get their feedback to find out what is it that you could do different to make your product better and stand out by taking feedback from closed study groups, from cohorts, etc. And sometimes, for me, the aha moment was when senior people in the industry come to you and say, "My goodness, Rohan, that was mind blowing."
Right.
And I go, "Well, thank you. I'm glad that you liked it." And when you consistently hear that pattern, you know that you're on the right track. And when you know that you're on the right track, you then need to decide whether I need to make this shift onto the entrepreneurial world or continue with my 9 to 5 job. And that shift is also not easy because you do need support from your family, from your friends, people born in the 80s, 90s. We have grown up with this whole ideology of you need to have a job. You need to have a job from 9 to 5. If you don't have a job, if you don't have a stable source of income, it's going to be very difficult. Because that's been ingrained in our heads for generations together. I think it's time we encourage people to step out of that box that they are in, to go and try something different, go and try something new. Because it's when you step out of that box, you actually do something good for the people that you're. And also, one more thing to remember, Jonathan, is that no matter what you're building, it has to be for the benefit of society.
Right.
It has to help the industry in some which way or form. It has to help people in any form. And for me, the aha moment was my SIM card got hijacked at least 2 or 3 times.
Hmm.
They hijack a SIM card, they take over your phone, they've got access to all your messages, etc. And I said, look at the amount of SMS scams that are going on. You get a random SMS message, something like, "Dad, I'm stuck in a train station. I lost my credit card. Can you please send me an Apple card, an Apple gift card?" And a lot of people over the age of, I wouldn't say 55 because I'm 55, a lot of people over the age of 50, 60, my parents, would be taken up by it. I mean, it's pretty shocking the amount of scams that go on by just SMS based attack. Now, in the day of AI, imagine I get a FaceTime call from my daughter. She looks like my daughter. She speaks like my daughter. She
Right.
sounds like my daughter. And she's in tears and she says, "Dada, I need money right now. I need an Apple card." There is a pretty high possibility that I might do it. But if these communication mediums are also front ended with some strong form of authentication and security, so I have the assurance that the person that I am talking to on my mobile device is the person who he or she claims to be, that level of assurance not only is good for me as an individual to safeguard her privacy, but it also stops a lot of scams. It also stops a lot of data breaches. It helps society as a whole. So when your primary motive is to help others, regardless of whether you're doing it through acts of kindness or through technology, it ensures that whatever journey you're setting foot on is a journey towards something that has a positive outcome, regardless if your company becomes a hit or if you're helping somebody.
Right. Right.
Those
That
four principles in mind, I think it really enables a person to succeed in that space. And that also gives you the courage to step out of the 9 to 5 into the entrepreneurial world.
that's excellent Excellent advice, Rohan. Okay, I do have one more question for you. I believe One Cosmos in the third or fourth quarter last year closed a $57 million Series B. That's a robust Series B. So you must have shown very good funnel math after your Series A. You must have shown how your go-to-market, and good on you. And by the way, your MVP process that you prescribed earlier in our conversation, couldn't agree more. I wrote an article last year called Build It, Test It, Prove It. It got 70,000 views. I didn't expect such viewership. All founders or would-be founders kind of looking for the process we use, but you have a good one. That's a good one.
Thank you.
57 million. You must have new challenges now than you did 5 years ago or 6 years ago. I imagine some of them may be keeping the culture of the company as it grows, like you've been growing, consistent and on track with you and your founding team members. I imagine the other might be, now that you have a playbook and you're entering your repeatable, predictable model, revenue model stage, keeping costs dialed in so you're capital efficient to get to your Series C. Now you have to show efficiency in your model. Tell me about those two things for you.
Absolutely. So yes, I mean, when investors come in, whether it's Series A or Series B, it sounds great for people on the outside, but the amount of stringent checks that they do before they invest in you, it's not just about them listening to your story and buying the story. They go and audit each and every aspect of your organization, from manpower to workforce to organizational policies to the code to the check to the licenses that you have used in your product. For example, no matter which product you use, you might be using OpenSSL for that matter, and OpenSSL itself has a license that's associated with it. So no matter which third-party library you're using in your product, they go and audit every single thing to ensure that it complies with regulations before they make an investable decision. And the fact that we have done it twice, in fact, we have done it twice. We had a Series A, and then we had a Series A plus, and then we had a Series B. And one of the biggest takeaways when we did a Series B was not the 57 million, was the fact that employees themselves wanted to invest in Series B. Now, when employees themselves want to invest in Series B, that's a huge assurance that
Yes.
your own people believe in what you do so much that they are vested in that environment and architecture. Now, of course, when you're at Series A and Series B and Series C, or whichever series you might be at, there's always challenges that come up with it. The number one challenge is meeting your numbers, because now you need to double your growth. Now you need to hit new numbers. Now, you've got new targets. And also on the technology stack, you need to constantly be evolving. You cannot build a product today and say, I'm not going to touch this and this is going to be my product for the next 6 years. Your product has to constantly evolve, keep in touch with the threat landscape. Nowadays, you've heard the story of digital arrest. So we need to also address situations like digital arrest, because it's not just about looking at a person's face and identifying who he is. We also have the ability to look at what we call a stress score. I can tell how stressed you are based on your video feed, maybe in this Zoom meeting or in this recording, or at a point in time where you're trying to authenticate into a platform. These signals actually help you identify what the appropriate policy needs to be that needs to get applied at the point in time where you're trying to authenticate to a platform and perform a specific action. A very good example of that would be, I'm just trying to authenticate to check my email, and I say, okay, fine, let the user in, his Face ID is sufficient. But now the user is trying to forward. I'm just giving you an example out here. Forward an email that has got investment data as an attachment
Yeah.
source. You need to have a policy kick in that says, wait a minute, Rohan doesn't do this anomaly. Why is he suddenly acting out of character and sending uh, private data external agent or to an external person? So that's where you need to have all your policies kick in self-learning policies, self-governing policies that go and look at patterns that identify whether you need to step that user's authentication up to another level altogether or let that authentication request go through. And in this day and age, authentication itself is not sufficient. We need to get into the authorization space as well. And they are pretty closely tied together. Authentication and authorization go hand in hand. So ensure that your platform is constantly evolving. And also, you don't want to build in a silo. You want to ensure that no matter what you build can be integrated with any other application or product that exists out there, including legacy apps. One of the biggest questions that we had was how do you integrate or provide single sign-on to applications that are sitting on a mainframe? And we provide single sign-on capabilities to mainframe hosted applications too. So constantly evolving your product, being in ensuring that you adhere to literally every regulation that's out there, ensuring that you're compliant with the regulations that exist, ensuring that you can integrate with various platforms, and also making your product so easy to deploy. We are on the Google Marketplace, we are on Bing's Marketplace, we are on Microsoft's Marketplace, we are on Amazon's Marketplace, we are on Meta's Marketplace. So anybody wanting to up their authentication using the One Cosmos platform simply has to go to their existing service provider, be it Microsoft or Google or Amazon or Bing or Okta, click on one button on their control panel saying enable 1K passwordless, and the integration is done. So investing the time and effort into ensuring that your product pre-integrates with all those other third-party applications that exist out there is also something that I encourage every other startup to do as well.
Right. That's really good advice. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask one final question. As you may know, I run a fractional marketing team. I step in as the fractional CMO. Typically, our clients are post MVP, maybe Series A, sometimes Series B, but very rarely Series C and after. We find, we maintain that using seasoned fractional help early on to get your go-to-market platform working is the best course, not only for capital preservation, but for speed and accuracy, getting a real seasoned group in there. Now, it sounds like you ran a great MVP program that got you to the Series A, and it sounds like you had to have shown takeoff to get a $57 million Series B. Did you ever use fractional talent? Have you now gotten to the phase where you're hiring full-time talent, or how do you manage that liftoff that you guys had?
We started with fractional talent, be it on the marketing side, be it on the engineering side, be it on the sales side. We had a lot of fractional. I wouldn't say CTO because I am the CTO, but we had on the marketing side and finance side, etc. And even on the engineering side. But as we grew over a period of time, we then started bringing everything in house. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are opposed to fractional talent because we are open to fractional talent even now. But yes, we did start off with a lot of fractional resources and post our MVP, post our initial launch, post our bootstrap round was when we started bringing everything in house. So even as of today, I would say we are 80% in house and 20% fractional.
That's good. That's good. I mean, too many clients to count have reported the same. Like it got them the leverage. Just looking at the CMO spot, I notice in early stage tech companies, the tenure of a CMO is 12 to 18 months. Of course, it takes them 4 months to get productive, truly productive. So it seems like a lot of company IP is lost when that person gets out. But
Yeah, those challenges exist. It's not just with the marketing roles, it's with almost every role in the organization.
right,
You bring engineers on board. Let's look at a back-end developer. Even the back-end developer coming to a new organization, tinkering around with new technologies like blockchain, with passkeys, with cryptography, with FIDO, with biometrics, with user behaviors, with agent authentication, it takes them a lot of time to learn and understand the entirety of the platform before they can actually start contributing code of value. Uh, and within 2 years or 3 years, that person moves on somewhere else because they got poached by another organization, or they got a better lucrative offer because their resume looks much better than what it used to be earlier. And now you get somebody else and you go through that education process all over again with this new person. This is not something that's a one-off incident. It's something that's ongoing. So you need to factor that into your plans right at the get-go, because no matter who you hire, you know that they would come in, they would stay, at some point they would go, and then somebody else would come in. So you need to factor that in to your entire churn process to ensure that your product development life cycle is not impacted, your marketing is not impacted. So you've got to have that vision as well, and not take uh, the high road route, which is we are going to have all in-house resources versus we are all going to go fractional. It has to be a fair mix of both. And sometimes it's also necessary that you might have a very strong engineering team, but you might have to reach out to somebody outside of the organization to come in with a different view and different perspective to help your engineering team go from step A to step B. And sometimes when you bring in people at that roles, their roles are specifically that you come in, you take us from step A to step B within a period of 8 months to 12 months. And that's your role, that's your task. It's time bound. You can have those roles as well that helps your organization grow over time.
Right. Well, Rohan, I want to thank you for spending the time with us here today. This has been very insightful. I'm sure the listeners will really enjoy this discussion. It sounds like One Cosmos is off to even better things in the future here. You've got such a stellar track record to date. So congratulations to you and your colleagues.
Thank you
So
so much.
with that, I thank you for joining. We built it because we had to, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for your time.